God also authorizes man to propagate what he initiates. And we talked about this once again last week, the idea of propagation being the natural reproduction and expansion of of something that's organic, or to expand an idea, or to expand, it deals with the expansion or the continuation of something that's been established. From the earliest instructions of being fruitful and multiplying, to the many parables and teachings about being productive, it's clear that God tasks man with managing and causing natural increase of that which God has begun. Emphasis should be placed on the concept of natural or organic increase as opposed to artificial increase. God is a living God. God is a God of living and organic systems as opposed to inanimate constructs. That is to say, God's model for the development or for development is one of growth rather than that of construction. Consider, for example, the verbiage used regarding the church in the book of Ephesians 2:19. Paul, talking to the church in Ephesus, says, "Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto an holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit." There's two things we're going to focus on in this passage. He says in the 21st verse, "In whom all the building fitly framed together grows into a temple." It doesn't say built into a temple, but it says grows into a temple. And then in the 22nd verse, it says that you are builded together for a habitation of God through the Spirit. So we talk about growth and we talk about building here. In this passage, the word growth in the ancient Greek, or the Koine Greek, oxano, refers to growth or increase of an organism, such as a plant or an infant. So in other words, when he talks about people growing into a temple, the concept that's referenced in the metaphor is the growth of a plant or an infant, natural organic growth, not construction. In construction, you sit and you measure out every single block and you make sure they fit together, and they're not supposed to change. They're supposed to stay the exact same. You stack them on top of each other and then you have a temple. But he references in this metaphor a growing church, not a constructed temple, but a growing temple. And the word buildeth, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that word because it's entirely too long, references the construction of the human body being built out of many different things to make one entire thing. In other words, the human body, as we know, has many, many components. Those components stack together, many individual components, and each of these individual components is living. Each of these individual components grows, and they're stacked together to create one individual. So we're not talking about a mechanical construction process, but we're talking about a natural organic growth process. So what God authorizes to do in propagating what he initiates is to allow or to cause an organic growth of a system that he puts in place, of a tradition that he establishes within his covenant. With Abraham, as we talked about, he establishes the idea of circumcision within the covenant. Being a symbol of the covenant, it's passed on from generation to generation for everybody that's going to be a part of the covenant. And it naturally grows until you have a nation of people. By the time you get over into Egypt, in their slavery, and they come out of Egypt, you have a nation of people who identify themselves within the construct of this covenant. So that tradition and that idea has been propagated. With Moses, he initiates the Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles, which becomes a cultural practice and defines within the law the concepts of the practice that are supposed to be, or the concepts of the culture that he wants to be who the people are. And he hands it down to Moses and Aaron, authorizes them to implement it throughout everywhere else, throughout the nation, and then it becomes in theory, it was to become a part of their cultural identity. So it's an example of organic growth, to propagate, not to force it to happen.